Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. 10 modern K2 tanks and 24 K9A1 howitzers arrived at the port of Gdynia last night. The ceremonial reception for the first batch of military equipment for the Polish army from South Korea was attended by President Andrzej Duda and Minister of National Defence Mariusz Błaszczak. President Andrzej Duda pointed out that in the face of Russian aggression against Ukraine, Poland is making a number of orders in a very short period of time to modernise and strengthen the Polish army. Contracts for the supply of Korean K2 tanks and K9 cannon howitzers were signed just 4 months ago.
Nikomu nie trzeba mówić.
No one needs to be told. No one needs to have it explained how important this process is, especially when facing war, facing Russian aggression. Since the 24th of February, since Russia invaded Ukraine, we have all seen one thing. Only the heroism of the soldier, equipped with modern, effective weaponry, is able to stop Russian imperial ambitions and Russian brutality.
Padła na Ukrainę.
The agreement also provides for a technical and training package and ammunition for the equipment. Already, Polish soldiers are training and gaining relevant knowledge in South Korea in the handling of tanks and howitzers. We want peace, so we are preparing for war. We are developing the Polish army numerically, but also strengthening it by equipping it with modern weapons. Both K2 tanks and K9 howitzers are among the most modern weapons. Korean Minister of Armaments, Eom Dong-wan, pointed out that this contract is of great importance for strengthening relations between Poland and South Korea. As Minister of Armaments, I firmly believe in the excellence of the K2 tanks and K9 howitzers. This equipment is highly regarded for its performance of durability and mobility, not only in Korea, but in many corners of the world to which it has found its way. July this year, Poland signed a framework agreement with Hyundai Rotem for the acquisition of 1,000 K2 tanks and its Polonized version K2PL, along with logistical support, technical protection vehicles, engineering support and accompanying bridges. The K2 is a modern tank, a 120mm caliber, 55mm cannon, rapid firing. Every 10 seconds it is able to respond with fire. The first part of the order for 180 tanks is to be completed by 2025. Meanwhile, from 2026, the Polish armaments industry will be able to service, provide spare parts and produce entire tanks. Certainly, a further agreement with Korea regarding licensing and transfer of production to Poland means that Poland can become a country that will be a hub here, selling and supplying weapons in this part of the world. The total value of Polish arms purchases in South Korea has so far amounted to more than $12 billion. 2 years ago, the Defense Ministry signed a contract to buy more than 360 American Abrams tanks. The Polish army will have 4, 5, maybe even 6 types of tank chassis in the army, which results in much higher logistical costs, meaning each tank crew will have to be trained for a specific type of tank. K2 tanks will be introduced first to the 16th Pomeranian Mechanized Division. Contracts for tanks, howitzers and aircraft, as well as more than 200 sets of the K239 Chonmu rocket artillery system, make Poland the largest buyer of Korean armaments in Europe. Security costs money, for goodness sakes. Security comes first. If we acquire equipment that is at the same time the best in the world, then it must cost still extra money. The Polish government has consistently pursued a policy of strengthening the Polish army. In September, Deputy Prime Minister Mariusz Błaszczak approved contracts for 48 FA-50 combat training aircraft, while the Homeland Defence Act passed in April calls for an increase in defence spending to 3% of gross domestic product starting in 2023. Next year, 97,400 million zloty is planned for national defence, as well as an additional funding for modernisation from the Armed Forces Support Fund in the amount of 40 billion zloty. Day 286 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky visited Slavyansk in the Donetsk region, an important city in the frontline zone. On the occasion of the Day of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, he thanked the soldiers for their heroic attitude.
As reported by President Volodymyr Zelensky, 70 Russian missiles were fired towards Ukraine yesterday. Fortunately, most of them were shot down. I thank our partners who supplied us with air defense systems. Every downed Russian missile is proof that terror can be fought. Unfortunately, we are not able to provide full security in Ukrainian skies. Several missiles have hit their targets. Unfortunately, there are casualties. At this point, 4 people are dead because of the Russian missile attack. My sincerest condolences to the families of the victims and their friends. Russians are in shock after yesterday's attacks on military airports deep inside the country. Although Ukrainian authorities have not officially addressed the incidents, Moscow directly accuses Kiev of carrying out the attacks. On the morning of December 5th, the Kiev regime, in an effort to ground Russian aircraft, attempted to attack the military airfields Yakhlevo in the Ryazan region and Engels in the Saratov region with Soviet drones. Russian authorities this morning reported another attack on a military airport, this time in Kursk. This is a response to the Russian attacks, of course. This marks the entry of the conflict to a new level. So far, not at all expected. The fighting has been transferred from Ukrainian territory to Russian territory. On December 6th, our neighbors celebrate Armed Forces Day. On this occasion, President Zelensky visited Slavyansk in the Donetsk region. The Ukrainian leader met soldiers and thanked them for their faithful service. If you are alive, it means that our country is alive because you defend it. Glory to Ukraine. Ukraine, however, has little reason to celebrate today. During a meeting of European Union finance ministers, Hungary's representative vetoed an amendment to financial legislation. The legislative amendments included provisions allowing the disbursement of an €18 billion loan to Ukraine. Hungary opposes amendment to the financial legislation. This is not the first time Viktor Orban has acted in the interests of the Kremlin rather than the European Union. The solidarity the Union is trying to show to Ukraine, which is fighting the Russian aggressor. This is very sad because it is another example of sabotaging good decisions. The loan was supposed to help Ukraine rebuild its infrastructure and maintain macroeconomic stability. For 285 days now, Ukraine has been defending European values against the Russian regime. The biggest price for this is being paid by ordinary citizens. Who would have thought? Would our parents be able to imagine that their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren would see something so terrible? Ukraine made another exchange of prisoners of war with Russia today. Under the agreement, more than 60 soldiers returned to the country.
Earlier today, the European Union agreed on a new law to prevent companies from selling into the European Union market coffee, beef, soy and other commodities linked to deforestation around the world. Deforestation is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions that drive climate change and will be a focus at the UN COP15 conference this week, where countries will seek a global deal to protect nature. The European Parliament's lead negotiator on a law to prevent companies from selling into the European Union market certain commodities linked to deforestation hailed it as groundbreaking.
Well, first of all, I think it is a groundbreaking legislation that we put in action this night. It is a very important tool to fight global deforestation because the EU stands for around 10% of global deforestation, not because we deforest here at home, but because through our consumption, because we are importing goods that are, for example, palm oil, cocoa, soy, etc., cattle, and those products stand for a lot of the deforestation going on. So it was very important that we set up now the system, especially ahead as well of the Conference of Parties on Biodiversity, which is going to happen in Montreal. This is our strong contribution from the European Union, and we hope that other economies and countries in the world will follow our path.
The law will require companies to produce a due diligence statement showing that their supply chains are not contributing to the destruction of forests before they sell goods into the European Union, or they could face hefty fines. Companies would need to show when and where the commodities were produced and verifiable information that they were not grown on land deforested after 2020. Failure to comply could result in fines of up to 4% of a company's turnover in an EU member state. It will apply to soy, beef, palm oil, wood, cocoa and coffee, and some derived products including leather, chocolate and furniture. Rubber, charcoal and some palm oil derivatives were included at the request of EU lawmakers.
Well, we will simply not accept anymore that those products that are after a certain cut-off date, this is set to 2020, for example, if the Amazonas would be cut down to produce soy to enter the European Union, we would not accept it anymore because we have now clear geolocation measures there to determine exactly where the product comes from, and we will just not accept it anymore on our market, and that is what is really the true innovation.
Countries that will be impacted by the new rules, including Brazil, Indonesia and Colombia, say that they are burdensome and costly. Supply certification is also difficult to monitor, especially as some supply chains can span multiple nations. EU countries and the European Parliament must now formally approve the legislation. The law may enter force 20 days later, after which large companies have 18 months to comply and smaller companies 24 months. EU member states will be required to carry out compliance checks covering 9% of companies exporting from countries with a high risk of deforestation, 3% from standard risk countries, and 1% for low-risk countries. The European Union said it would work with affected countries to build up their capacity to implement the rules. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.